Now, following the election that Donald Trump claims was going to be rigged by Hillary Clinton, who obviously did a terrible job at said rigging because she lost. She lost the Electoral College anyway. A Republican-controlled House committee voted yesterday to eliminate the Independent Bipartisan Election Assistance Commission. Now, the Committee on House Administration voted 6-3 along party lines, of course, to move forward with the Election Assistance Commission Termination Act. Now, that is legislation that would eliminate the only agency responsible for making sure our voting machines are not hacked, so our elections are not tampered with. Because, the integrity of our elections is so important that we need to get rid of the people who make sure our elections are filled with integrity. Okay. Now, the legislation will now advance to the Republican-controlled House, where, look, to be honest, I think it's got a pretty good chance of passing. So, look, and for some context, let me give you some information about the EAC so you're properly informed. Now, basically, the Election Assistance Commission was formed back in 2000 after the disastrous election where, look, George W. Bush lost the popular vote, won the Electoral College. You had Florida with the hanging chads, all sorts of just little disasters, right? And a lot of big questions about whether or not the election was really legitimate. So in response to all these problems, the government said, okay, well, you know what? Let's create a commission in order to fix these problems, because there were some serious problems. All right. Basically, their original mission was to help the states update and improve their voting systems, so we didn't have stuff like the hanging chads anymore. Well, in recent years, the agency had worked to ensure that elections were accessible to those with disabilities. They allocated funds for innovative election technology and studied and reported election best practices, among other roles. I think I've kind of figured out why Republican politicians are not exactly in favor of having this agency even exist. Now, what, you think they want more disabled people to have access to the polls? They might actually vote for Democrats. Don't want that. Can't have that. Now, how about their mission to study best practices in elections? Well, can't have that either, because the government might actually go and implement some of these best practices, which might increase voter turnout. Again, can't have that. Nope, let's get rid of it. In fact, Thomas Hicks, one of the commissioners currently on the EAC, told Think Progress that eliminating the agency would be a huge mistake. Be a huge mistake. He says it's the only agency that deals with the administration of elections. We touch 8,000 jurisdictions across the country, from voter registration to the counting of ballots. My read of the Termination bill is that it just eliminates the agency, but doesn't move the responsibilities around. So, look, again, that's one of the big issues here. You get rid of it, it's not getting replaced. And the responsibility for making sure our elections aren't hacked into doesn't fall anywhere else. You're taking the cops off the beat, is essentially what you're doing. And look, if you want to replace the agency with something different, better, that's fine. But this is, again, straight up getting rid of the whole thing. So, now Republicans say, we're going to get rid of it because we don't need it anymore. Why replace it? It's did its job. It was supposed to be a temporary agency anyway. This is from Representative Greg Harper, now who's the chairman of the committee. He argued that the EAC was formed as a temporary agency and that the issues that it was designed to address have been resolved. Well, see, guys, the problem, it's fixed. Our voting systems don't need to be watched for potential hacks. Or, we've already solved other problems. Why do we need this agency, a bureaucracy? We don't need it no more. However, you do realize that technology changes, hackers become better, exploits are found and used every day. And look, if a bad actor or even a foreign country wants to influence our election, and I'm not saying they have, a target would be voting machines. Which, of course, is why I'm in favor of getting rid of voting machines in the first place, and replacing them with hand-counted paper ballots. I think that's always the best option. Now, the Brennan Center for Justice wrote a letter to Harper and the ranking Democratic member of the House committee, basically urging them to vote against the EAC termination legislation. And in it, they write, a lot of Americans are expressing concern right now about the security of our election system and their confidence in the election system. The ESC is exactly the kind of place that can actually address the concerns that people have. And along with the Brennan Center for Justice, you also have a group of 38 different organizations and individuals, including the League of Women Voters and the NAACP, that have also urged the committee to oppose the legislation. Now, unfortunately, they didn't listen and voted among party lines. Now, what they want them to do, what they originally called on the EAC to do, or the committee, sorry, is to strengthen the EAC and provide it with additional staff that it needs. At its full capacity, the EAC should have 4 commissioners working to respond to election issues. Issues that, unlike what the Republicans claim, still exist. For example, in 2012 and 2016, both there were incredibly long lines. For 2016 specifically, there were messed up registrations, as well as a lot of the shady stuff we documented during the primary, where basically the DNC had tilted the election massively to Hillary Clinton. There were some major issues there. Changed registrations, all that different kind of stuff. That's the stuff the EAC needs to look into. Now in 2012, they couldn't look into any of those issues because they didn't even have any commissioners until 2014. So it took an executive order to bring in an outside commission to even try and look at some of those problems. And it's not like the EAC doesn't have issues. It does need to be properly funded and staffed. That doesn't mean eliminate it. That doesn't mean get rid of it. Currently, the EAC is working to upgrade the voluntary voter system guidelines, which is basically a set of requirements that states can use to check their voting systems and see if they're functional, accessible, and secure. Without those requirements, you could have issues with hacking, inaccessibility, electoral fraud, etc., etc. And see, those are the things that the EAC is there to look and to prevent. And it makes sense to have an agency that's independent and bipartisan to look around with that, or to look at that, especially if you're concerned about the integrity of our elections as well as access to the polls. Now, unfortunately, there are 2 things that Republican politicians and some Democrats as well, and I'm referring to the primary on that, didn't seem to care so much about. So, look, it's a bit hypocritical to say that they care, Republicans, about the electoral integrity, and then vote to get rid of the agency tasked to look into that and to make sure that people are not stuffing ballots or doing voter fraud or doing any of these kind of stuff or hacking into our systems. It's hypocritical. In reality, though, we all know that just like voter ID, the idea here in getting rid of this agency is to have less people vote. Because when less people vote, Republicans tend to win, and so does the establishment. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.